where we're going to go today. I'm just going to start by giving an overview of the Maryland District Court Self-Help Centers so that you can have an understanding of the kind of cases we see and background about where I'm coming from. I'm going to move on to working on managing expectations of visitors in a brief advice clinic. We're going to discuss recognizing a crisis, and then I'd like to go through some case studies of scenarios that have come up at the self-help centers and how what success we've had in helping people navigate those situations. We're going to discuss setting up visitors for success, talk about resources and referrals for your visitors at the brief advice clinics, and then we can get into questions. I do encourage you, if you have specific questions about something that I'm covering, go ahead and add them in the chat box and we'll keep an eye out. If you have scenarios that you want to run by me or others in the group or broader questions about brief advice clinics, save those towards the end and we're going to have plenty of time. I'll try and give you a heads up when I'm getting towards the end so you can make sure that you have your question ready to go. So about the Maryland and District Court Self-Help Centers. At the Maryland Court Self-Help Center, we assist people via phone and live chat. We're staffed by attorneys, and we help with a full range of civil cases. Those cases are the ones within the district court jurisdiction as well as circuit court jurisdiction. So it is heavy on landlord-tenant situations, family law, small and large claims, consumer matters, as well as protective orders or peace orders, as well as foreclosure. That service is open 8:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, so it's convenient for folks that want to call perhaps after work hours. We also run 4 district court self-help centers. The lawyers at the centers are in Baltimore City, Upper Marlboro, Salisbury, and Glen Burnie, and they help with civil legal issues within the jurisdiction of the district.
Self-muted. Hey Sarah, it looks like you're muted on the webinar.
Yeah, it said I was muted by the organizer. It now says I'm unmuted.
I apologize.
Okay, so should I back up a few slides?
Yeah, I think so, just a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. Can everyone hear us now? I apologize for that. Someone had written in that they could hear something, and so I was trying to.
Okay, we don't really need to go back that far.
Okay, great. Sorry about that, everyone. Thank you for your patience.
Okay, so managing visitor expectations in a brief advice clinic is really important. A lot of times this is going to be the first time that your visitor has been interacting with an attorney, and so they have a lot of expectations about what that meeting is going to look like. So I think that one thing that we really try and do is lead the meeting with explaining the scope of services that you can provide. So at the self-help centers is probably the same in the brief advice clinics you participate in. There's an agreement for self-help assistance. It explains that we provide brief advice. The service doesn't extend beyond the day, but that you're welcome to return if you have additional questions. So letting them know the scope of what you can do for them should help manage expectations. Be clear that you are not their attorney and you will not represent them in court. Many visitors have the impression that if they meet with an attorney, that attorney is also going to appear in court with them. So you may need to spend some time explaining how your services are different, and that helps reduce confusion after the meeting as well. Let them know that they are going to leave with a list, essentially a to-do list, referrals, resources, the next steps that they should take. So hopefully that will reduce some anxiety about, oh my gosh, I have to absorb everything that this attorney is saying because they're not going to be with me later. So this webinar is about managing crisis for a visitor. So I wanted to go through ideas about who is in crisis. So 3 scenarios, and think about which visitor is in crisis. So 1, you have a crying elderly woman who was sexually assaulted by a neighbor, is in your office. 2, you have a nervous couple who has a pending debt collection case. Or 3, you have an angry tenant who's scheduled for eviction tomorrow. When I was putting together this webinar, I really had to think about, well, what is crisis? And so if you look at some of the different scenarios that come into our offices, which of those people is in crisis? So I looked for a definition of crisis that made sense in a legal context. The one I found that I really like is a stage in a sequence of events at which the trend of all future events, especially for better or worse, is determined. And I think that really encapsulates what we do as lawyers, and in this context, what the importance of brief advice. No pressure, but the decisions and the advice, or the advice that you give at a brief advice clinic, is really going to set in motion the future events, especially for better or worse. So there's a great amount of importance based on the advice you give and the direction you send your visitor in. Also, remember that we are used to legal problems, suits for large amounts of money, evictions, but for your visitor, this may be the first time that they've encountered the court system. They are anxious, they are afraid, and there's a lot riding on the outcome of each of these situations. So while we often think of crisis as these really, we have maybe a preconceived notion about what crisis is, I would argue that each of these people is in crisis based on the definition that we're using today, which is you're setting off a sequence of events that can help these people navigate their situation for better or for worse. Okay, so some case studies. Some of these are a little heavy, but they are situations that we encounter at the Self-Help Center, and we've based these scenarios on situations that we've encountered. Okay, so the credit card debt scenario. Your visitor's been sued for $10,000 in credit card debt. You've determined that she's been served and that she does not have a defense to the case. She's just returning to work following a long leave of absence to care for her sick husband. Because she's returning to work, she sees economic stability just over the horizon, and she really doesn't want to file for bankruptcy. On the flip side, she owns her home, she has a daughter in college, and she's shortly going to have wages that can be garnished. So she also realizes that if a wage garnishment comes through, it rocks the whole boat. So this is actually one of my scenarios that I assisted with, and it happened in the not too distant future. So even though I've been doing this a while, I can always use a refresher in this. I was 30 minutes into what I considered a pretty straightforward legal issue, but I found my visitor going in circles. It was really difficult for her because it was such a domino effect. If she chose to do nothing about the case, this parade of horribles would would result. If she chose a different way, it also was not a great outcome. So after 30 minutes, a light bulb kind of went off for me. And use plain language. I found myself, even in this consultation after almost 10 years of doing this, that I was using terms like notice of intention to defend or dismissal on stipulated terms. I really feel like the legalese that we use sometimes increases the stress on our visitors because it lets them know that there's that much more about the situation that they don't understand. So instead of using things like dismissal on stipulated terms, I might have suggested a dismissal of the case based on an agreement between you and your credit card company. Reducing it to plain language, taking out the Latin, taking out the legalese, and making it language that she can access and understand. Break the problem down into manageable pieces. This really goes back to this idea that if she chooses to do nothing about the case, wage garnishment, daughter has to drop out of college, financial ruin, all of these problems swirling. What I ended up doing is breaking it down into she really wanted to settle the case. And instead of trying to, I felt like professionally, I have to give you all of the options. But for purposes of today, let's break it down into a manageable piece that you can take and move forward and try and resolve the situation. So the manageable piece in this situation was give the plaintiff's attorney a call. See if they are willing to work with you for a settlement and see if that settlement is something that you could do. Whoops, wrong way. Okay, make a to-do list. There's a reason I have this yellow sticky here. I love them. They are hard to lose because they're sticky. They are easy to spot because they're yellow. And they're fairly big. This isn't the real life size. I think these are about 6 by 4. So it lets me, if I need to make a longer to-do list, it gives me the space. Making a to-do list gives your visitor something concrete that they can take and leave the courthouse with and rely on if they forget. This is an emotional, stressful situation, and when we're in those situations, our memories can't necessarily be trusted. So for this visitor, her to-do list might say something like, call plaintiff's attorney, and I might write the plaintiff's attorney's number down there for her. Discuss settlement. And then what am I going to put last on the list is give her a next stop for help. So my advice in this situation was just reach out and see if you can settle. If that doesn't work out, or even if it does, give us a call back. Let's make sure that the settlement is something that covers all your bases, that it's in writing, that you know that you need to get the case dismissed. If I had put all of that on her plate during that consultation, I think she would have been overwhelmed. She couldn't afford an attorney. She was too high income for legal services, so I knew that more brief advice was what she needed. So she couldn't afford her own attorney, and her income was too high for legal services. So I encouraged her to come back to us to reevaluate. I'll just check and make sure if there's any questions. Okay, keep moving then. Okay, eviction. This is one of our common scenarios at the Self-Help Center, unfortunately. Your visitor tells you that he had filed 3 motions to stay as eviction for failure to pay rent, all of which have been denied. And he's pretty upset. He's yelling that his family will be on the street in the cold tomorrow morning and you have to do something about it. You've reviewed the case and you've determined that he does not have the right to pay the rent and stop the eviction, so that's not an option. You've also looked and seen that there's really no defenses, nothing that you could help him present to the court to reopen the case. And you would try and explain that, but he hasn't stopped yelling. So my suggestions in this scenario, the first is to empathize. And I say empathize as opposed to sympathize. unless you have been evicted from your home, you probably have no idea what this man is experiencing. He's facing the loss of his possessions, the loss of his home, the loss of his family's possession, and homelessness. So empathizing as opposed to sympathizing, we're here to help. Unless you can sympathize, you want to make sure that your reaction to his situation is authentic. Sometimes you may have found yourself in a situation where you say, I know how you feel, I know you're upset, but unless you've been in his situation, you probably really don't know. So sometimes we take an approach of just saying, this is an awful situation, I'm here to try and help you, I need you to take a deep breath, and we're going to try moving forward on what you need to do to get out of this situation. There's no one-size-fits-all answer, but that's an approach that sometimes works, is empathy. Again, we're there to help, and that emotion for us is real and authentic and might be one that the visitor can relate to. This one's hard. Tell your visitor the legal advice they need to hear. This gentleman has filed motion after motion to stay the eviction. Denied, denied, denied. And we are getting closer and closer to the eviction date. It's a pretty frequent scenario that we might have somebody down at the courthouse at 9 o'clock in the morning wanting to file another motion to stay for an eviction that's going to happen at 10. And at some point, you're doing the visitor a disservice if you keep them there to file another motion to stay. What the visitor really needs to hear in this scenario, where there's no defense, is this is coming, this is going to happen, and we need to make sure that we reduce the harm to your family and that you keep as many possessions as possible, because this eviction is coming, and there's nothing else legally you can do. Sometimes this helps folks hit the reset button, shake it off, and know that they need to move forward with gathering belongings. Help them make a plan. So he's stressed, he's upset, he may not be thinking clearly. So suggest you have friends and relatives that might be able to help you gather belongings. If you can't do that, what are the things that are most valuable to you? Photos or a TV or clothing or kids' medical records. Help them make a plan about what they need to get out of that house. And this doesn't have to just apply to evictions. I think we, in brief advice clinics, frequently encounter folks who are at the end of the road of their case and they need a direction forward. It doesn't always work, but telling them the hard of empathizing, telling them the hard advice, and helping them make a plan to move forward with this worst case scenario is what you can do in this situation. Okay. So an elderly woman arrives and asks for your help in completing a peace order. She's visibly shaking and crying, and she tells you that she was sexually assaulted by her neighbor. Whether or not she gets the order, she says she's terrified to return home. So in this scenario, you are balancing someone's legal needs, the need for an order of protection, versus a real threat to their physical safety. In this situation, again, this was a scenario that I dealt with. I had to recognize my limitations. I am not an attorney who has taken any kind of special course in dealing with victims of sexual assault. So just because I didn't have that knowledge base doesn't mean that there wasn't someone else there that did. So the next step was recognize my limitations. This woman needs more help than I can provide. And that could come up in different scenarios. It doesn't have to be the situation of sexual assault. It could be someone coming to you for a $3 million medical malpractice case that they want to do pro se. Unless you're a med mal attorney, you know it's beyond you know it's beyond what you can help with. Not that they should be doing that pro se anyway. So in this situation, because it was a situation of sexual assault, it became important to connect the visitor with the resource. Whenever possible, pick up the phone and make a connection on the other end. And I say connection as far as opposed to a referral. If you can pick up the phone and try to get the person a connection on the other end, that gives them somewhere directly to go. In this situation, we called the local domestic violence program, and we got them to come to our office. Well, with her permission, we got the local domestic violence program to come to our office for legal help, safety planning. She may have needed to go to the doctor, but we knew that they had the specialty that we didn't. So again, make the connection, not the referral. Don't give her a number and say, here you go, best of luck. When you can, try and find the help on the other end for them. Okay, setting your visitor up for success. So in the world of so many folks having to navigate their situation without the benefit of an attorney, the cards are stacked against them a lot of times. So how can you increase their likelihood of success? I like to give people clear instructions about how to proceed, reliable resources, and connections to legal help when they need it. Here's my handy sticky note again. To-do lists I have found are invaluable. Again, our folks are stressed. They have a lot riding on these legal situations often, and they may leave and totally forget what you said. So write them a to-do list. It could include documents they need to pull together. I need you to come back with your lease agreement or the auto loan contract. Perhaps there's deadlines that apply. Do not expect your visitor to remember that they have to return by November 16th to file for an appeal. So if it's a time urgent situation, you could include deadlines on this. You could also include referrals. Perhaps go to Maryland Volunteer Lawyers Service next and apply for assistance. You can include those, but give them clear steps of where they're going next and a place to fall back on if it doesn't work out. So come back to the self-help center if you end up having to go this alone. So do they need legal help? Analyze the likelihood of success if they move forward on their own. So they're filing a small claim for $100. Can they do that on their own? Well, maybe. One way that I have found is helpful to put it to visitors is, if you can access an attorney, are you willing to lose this case because you chose to move forward pro se? So are you willing to lose because you chose to be unrepresented? In situations where people could either afford counsel or perhaps there's attorney's fees attached, this is usually an effective approach. Like, this is, you are going to lose $30,000 of your claim because you chose to not hire an attorney. If you put it in that perspective, a lot of times that helps people realize the risk. Analyze what resources they can afford. So if you have someone coming in with a landlord-tenant case, they're on Section 8, we're not going to probably refer them to the lawyer referral service. We're going to send them to the network of legal services providers. So make sure that you're referring them, you're not giving the shotgun approach of referrals where they get everything. You're tailoring your referrals to something that they might actually be able to access. Again, analyze for your low cost help that might be available to them, and what referrals can you provide, and can you make that referral warm? Again, picking up the phone, contacting somebody on the other end. If I have somebody come in with a legal issue that I know Amy at MVLS has said she might be able to help with, I'm going to make an effort to pick up the phone and call Amy and say, do you think this person might get help from you? by the way, they're headed your way. I found this page in preparing for the webinar that I think is probably helpful for us as legal services providers to analyze the world of legal help. So from free help to fee-based help, limited scope representation can also be helpful for clients, but I just wanted to put it up here. It's from the People's Law Library. I think that if I wasn't kind of in the legal services world, this would be a helpful way for me to think about where can I send this person so that they might get help. So resources. If you're working in a brief advice clinic.
Sarah? Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, Sarah. It's Janice. Can we go back one slide?
Sure. Wrong way.
Oh.
One second.
My question is about where to find this page here. It's in the People's Law Library, you said?
It's in the People's Law Library, and apparently I edited out the address, which is not helpful. I get a lot of people referred to our live chat from this. I think if you put in getting legal help in Maryland, People's Law has a search term box that would probably lead you to this page.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So resources for self-represented Marylanders. If you're working in a brief advice clinic, you're aware that a lot of people have to move forward without an attorney. So for better or for worse, you're going to be trying to connect them with resources to help them navigate the case on their own as best they can. So we just looked at People's Law Library, and excuse me, you see the search term box here. People's Law Library is actually a really good resource for attorneys as well as self-represented Marylanders. In a brief advice setting, at some point, you are going to get somebody who wants to know how many chickens they can have in their backyard. And you're going to say, I have no idea. And they're going to say, but aren't you a lawyer? So People's Law Library has an article about chickens and how many chickens you can have in your backyard. All of that to say, if you're in a brief advice setting, you are going to get some kind of situation that you don't know anything about and that you may have to start researching. I like People's Law because they have a wide range of legal issues, but they also include citations, so it can be a jumpstart for your research. Also, and just to mention, our live chat box is here on People's Law Library, so we get a lot of self-represented visitors this way, and that's one of the services that's open until 8:30 at night. But you can see from the page, I'm guessing most of you are familiar with People's Law Library, but that it covers a wide range of issues. So not only helpful for you to kickstart your research because they have the citations, but it's also got lots of information for self-represented Marylanders. mdcourts.gov also has a lot of help. So their website has, they have videos. You can see here there's a video about the foreclosure process. We have webinars that we present through the Self-Help Center, filing your case in the district court. We've actually made that permanent on the site so you can figure out how to fill out that form that's so difficult. You can get help with live chat there, access to the Self-Help Center. So there's a lot of information available on mdcourts.gov as well. The videos, and there's also videos on mdcourts.gov, and if you know that your person is going to head to that small claim without the help of an attorney, this can be a good resource for pointing them in the right direction. There are videos for presenting your case in court, preparing for your day in court, what to wear to court, what not to wear to court. So that can be helpful for them as they get ready for perhaps their small claims trial. Another good resource is these tip sheets that the judiciary provides through their Access to Justice department. This, again, could be really valuable for helping you analyze a visitor's case as well as them analyzing their own case. Should I represent myself? So it goes through fee shifting cases, cases where a public defender might be available, but it also drills down into, are you comfortable speaking in court? Are you comfortable confronting the defendant in court? So lots of information on MD courts. Okay, so I did not give you the heads up that I had planned to, but that's essentially what we have for as far as dealing with folks in crisis. I'd really welcome questions if you want to run a scenario or a situation that you had. I think that would be really helpful, both for you as well as all the other participants. Janice, is there only option to put this in the chat box? Their questions?
Yes, I think that's going to be the easiest way. I can try and, yeah, that might be the easiest way. I try to unmute people, but I don't want to mess up the mess up the communications again. So if anyone has a question, please enter that into the question box, and we'll be able to respond to that. I do see that Karen was kind enough to put up the website for the People's Law Library, and thank you for that, Karen. That's very helpful for everyone. Can everyone see that website link? www.peoples-law.org. And that is a really incredible resource.
Let me get that.
Yeah, it's a very good resource for not only attorneys but also clients, because it's written in such a way that clients can understand. And I think it's also helpful for attorneys to read it as well, because sometimes things are phrased in such a way that it may be easier to explain. You know, I think sometimes as attorneys, like you were saying, Sarah, we get kind of stuck in our own little legal language, and sometimes it's hard for us to step out of that and really speak regular language to clients who don't speak legal languages.
Janice, I'm looking at the chat box, and I'm noticing that mine says to organizers and panelists only. I'm trying to find a way to make sure that that address goes to the participants, but okay. I'm not seeing that option.
Great, let me see. Let me get Matthew. I'm gonna. Great. Okay, I think we've got it on the chat box. Can everybody see that? www.peoples-law.org. Looks like, yes, I see a yes. Yay! Thanks. Great. Well.
No, I don't see a yes. I don't know why.
Oh, it's under questions. Maybe if you look under questions.
Oh.
There we go. Thank you. Great. So Sarah, this is a really interesting topic, because even though you're specifically working with clients that come to you at self-help centers, you know, any attorney will get a client that that's in crisis. So regardless of where they are, where they're practicing. So I think these tips are very transferable to any client, because many clients, even when they seek a private practitioner, will be in crisis as well. So these are very practical tips that we can take and apply anywhere.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to highlight that even though these cases were kind of specific to situations that we'd had, even the failure to pay rent eviction, or you can transfer the empathy and the other suggestions, telling them the bad news, to a lot of different situations. It's hard to have people coming back again and having kind of misplaced hope that their situation will be different if they just file one more thing.
Right. Yeah. Does anybody have an experience or interaction or a transaction with a client that they would like to share that might be kind of along these lines? Sometimes when you're in the middle of the situation, it's very hard to know what to do, but then after you've had a little time to ponder it, it's nice to hear how other people may have approached it, and that can help you modify your approach in the future. I think it's very difficult I know that when I've been in the middle of a conversation with a client who is in crisis or starting to get hysterical, it's very hard not to get pulled into their emotional state, especially when they're yelling at you, because you're telling them something they don't want to hear. So I think that, how do you deal with that, Sarah, when someone starts getting very emotional and starts yelling at you? I mean, it's not your fault, of course, but you're unfortunately giving them news that they don't want to hear. And so sometimes people can get very frustrated, and for some people, that's how their reaction is by getting angry.
Right. So
I use that.
I take a deep breath and I remind myself that it's not personal. It's not about me. They're not yelling at me. They are yelling because they are stressed and they are upset and they are scared. And so I say that. I know you're upset. I know you may be frightened about this situation. I'm here to help. And you need to take a deep breath and sit down and let's work on this together. That usually works. I did want to kind of touch on when it doesn't work, because sometimes your safety it has to come first. So at the self-help, at the self-help. I'm sorry, Janice?
Oh, I said there's actually a question about that. One of our listeners has sent in a question about, has there been a situation where you felt you needed the police to be aware of the client's matter? So that kind of goes on with, but maybe not specific.
So felt the police too. So the scenario that comes up the most is a visitor at a walk-in center who is getting out of control. If I feel I'm not too easily shaken, but if you are feeling unsafe, then it's time to bring in someone else or seek a safe environment. At the self-help centers, we have panic buttons. We have bailiffs who are readily available. I think that if you're going into a meeting with a visitor knowing that they're already at 11, then you may want to say to a coworker, hey, I'm going into a meeting. He's real or she is really upset. Can you just keep an ear out for me? As a supervisor, if I already know that, I am already on top of that situation, keeping an ear out and making sure that my staff attorney or my administrative assistant is safe. But we do employ things like bailiffs and panic buttons, and we have had to pull those before because people feel that their safety is in jeopardy. So I'm not sure that was the visitors or the participants' question, though. I think that the question may be more, and I want to make sure, is it that the visitor has said something that I'm worried they're going to commit a crime or something.
Well, I imagine that would come up as well, certainly. Has that happened to you?
Oh, yeah. So in that situation, I pretty much never make that decision on my own, even though I am the managing director of our firm. I always get a second opinion. I always go to the rule of professional conduct that talks about disclosing what would either otherwise be confidential information, and I believe that it is, and you want to check the rule, but I believe that the rule says that you may disclose, not that you shall disclose, but you may disclose if there's a reasonable certainty of death or bodily harm. Have I gotten to that situation before? Yes. One thing is that we sometimes have people who threaten suicide. And you've got to make that determination. You've got to go to your ethical rule and make a determination of whether or not you may call. I never make that decision alone. I always bring in perhaps legal aid's chief counsel or another supervisor to really hash through that situation with me. Another thing that we have done is had the visitor, especially when they're on the phone, consent to having crisis response come out. There is mental health crisis response, I believe, in every county. So if you can get their agreement, may I call the crisis response team and have them come out and talk to you? I'm worried about your safety. That situation has definitely come up, and not all the time, but people have agreed. And that was another example of making the connection as opposed to the referral. Can we help you get access to mental health services? And instead of, if they wanted to take the number and move forward on their own, they can do that. But sometimes they'll let us make the call. But obviously, I have to do that usually with the client's permission is the best way to approach that. I also want to say that our staff attorneys on the phone have this come up, not a lot, but a fair amount, and their instruction is always to get a supervisor in the room. We use GChat to communicate between each other, and I may get a message that pops up that says, I need a supervisor. I have someone who I think is suicidal.
Sarah, there's a question about how to find information on crisis response team.
This is a good question, and it is one that I have been meaning to have in one place. And I am embarrassed to say I don't have it in one place right now. I believe that I have gone to, so one option is calling 211 if you need to. They're very good about guiding you. I have usually turned to the world of Google to figure it out. Ideally, I would have a list of crisis response. Our walk-in centers have crisis response lists, so they've gone ahead and done the research and found the crisis response team. The scenario I described where we did get the client's permission to call crisis response, she was actually out of state. So I am trying to find that now. I usually find it on a county website because they are usually county funded.
Thanks. And kind of going along with that, there's a question about if the client is being beaten and fears injury once he or she leaves the self-help center, do you contact the police or do you just advise that they call the police?
So let me make sure I understand. If the visitor is being abused?
Yes, I think so. And fears injury once they leave the center. I guess the question would be, do you contact the police? Do you assist them with contacting the police there, or do you advise them to call the police?
It really depends on the situation. I think I would start by, of course, asking, can I bring in the local, again, recognizing my limitations. This person is in crisis and their physical safety is being threatened by another person. And that is a point where I would absolutely say I have got to get the domestic violence provider in here for safety planning, for one, and also for help with the legal process going forward. So that would be my approach, is to immediately stop and get the local domestic violence, whether it be House of Ruth or the YWCA in Anne Arundel County or Life Crisis in Salisbury. My response would be, can I please connect you with the domestic violence provider here so they can plan for safety and also hopefully help you with this, with the protective order that you're filing. The scenario that we described with the elderly woman that was a victim of assault, that's what we did. Is I stopped, I said, this is, while I can help you fill out this petition, I am not trained in domestic violence and I need to bring in the expert. And we made the connection, they came down and they took it from there. Those are the experts in safety planning, and that's how I would advise them to, someone in that situation to react, is get the expert on board so that you know that somebody who is trained in responding to those situations is on site. Does that make sense?
So we do have a question about going back to that second case study slide on the assault victims, which I think sort of summarizes what you were just saying. Are you able to go back to that slide?
Yeah, I'm working on that right now.
Okay.
Taking me forever, but
Getting there.
Yeah. Okay, here we are.
Okay. Yeah. So this is the scenario, and then your responses here. Okay. And we do also have a question about where are the self-help centers?
Sure. So let me see if I don't think we have a map. So the Annapolis Self-Help Center is kind of in the business park area, and that's just our phone and live chat service. I'm going to move to bring up a website here. So we're just one kind of self-help center, and there are family law self-help centers around the state. So if you go to mdcourts.gov, actually we're on the main site, this will help. Okay, so if you go to mdcourts.gov/self-help, you get a breakdown of the different kinds of self-help centers. So this is our self-help center in Annapolis, where we have the phone and live chat service. Then you have the district court self-help centers. If you click on this link, you get both information about what we do, but also this right-hand column has information about where we are. So clicking here, it gives you both our address. So for instance, Glen Burnie, our Glen Burnie office is in the district court in Glen Burnie, and also directions of how to get there. So the other thing that is available is the family law self-help centers, which my program, Maryland Center for Legal Assistance, we are a subsidiary of Legal Aid. We are not affiliated with. So the family law assistance self-help centers are around the state. They have a variety of help that they provide. Some are staffed by paralegals, some have limited hours. So you would want to go help the person find the self-help center in their area and then click to determine what kind of help they provide. So for instance, the Family Law Self-Help Center in Anne Arundel County, here are their hours, although those will be changing after the first of the year, and where you can get help, which is the Circuit Court in Anne Arundel County. But again, these vary from county to county, so you will want to make sure that you research the specific county that they are in.
Great. Oops, sorry. So it does look like they are statewide then, yes?
Yes, I can go back, sorry. They are statewide. I believe that, but they're run by the individual circuit courts. So that's why you have some variety in the hours. I think as well as, for instance, Baltimore County has a paralegal, I believe, that staffs their center. Anne Arundel Circuit Court has a combination of paralegal and attorney. So you would want to research the specific county so that you know what they're getting.
Okay. Great. All right. Well, I don't see any further questions at the moment, but I think this has been a tremendously helpful webinar. It's Sarah, thank you so much for breaking things down into things that are manageable for us to remember how to do. I think it works both ways. And also helping to point out some very valuable resources, which I think anybody can use. And certainly when faced with a situation like that, it's really important to know where to go to and where to find information. So, thank you. There is a question here actually about the PowerPoint slides. Sarah, would you be able to share your slides?
Sure. Send me an email. I'm sorry.
Yeah, or I think we might be able to access them as well and put them on the webinar somehow. We'll figure it out, but we can make them available. Definitely, there's some interest in that, which is great. And it would be a nice way to have this as a handout to refer to people, to refer back to. So I think we can make it into a handout on the webinar somehow. But I'll figure that out, and we will send out emails to let everybody know the best way to access that then.
Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Sarah. Take care.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.